Hey guys, what's up? This is Free Nachos, and in this video we're going to be playing 2 tables of rush and cash. I think I want to bet a big blind here. Kind of weird how I got into this, and I was setting up the video and all sorts of stuff went wrong, and then I opened this, which I don't think is an open. But yeah, here we are. So we're playing 2 tables. The goal is to play an exploitative strategy. Since we're playing 50 now, I think one thing that I'd like to do is play a slightly more complex strategy on the flop so that we get into more complex turn scenarios where I think my opponents will make more mistakes than I do. In other words, we are going to play more checks on the flop in order to exploit our opponent's turn strategies or flop stacking strategies. So basically, I think people play worse versus a check than versus a bet, generally speaking, and so we are going to force them to play more versus a check. This is too small. I'm standing down again. He gave me a compliment earlier, saying he loved my content, so we're going to be playing a hand versus him, which should be fun. Here versus half-pot, we are going to call with our hands. The turn is quite interesting. Like, the bigger he goes, the more we're going to have leads on the 6, unless he goes like very large. Where's that? Should think about beating there. Is this guy somewhat aggressive? It's an interesting spot. I think I'm just going to bet myself. He should be betting 9s, and therefore I don't block checkbacks. And since I don't expect he will be betting often enough, I'm just going to bet myself there. He's going to overfold as well. It's not great either way, but yeah, I'm just going to open this. Like, they seem to be under 3-betting quite a bit, which means that we are going to see more flops, and we can still pick up the blinds. Obviously, it's relatively tight here, so raising pre-flop is probably okay. 4-5 would be mixing, although maybe in this rake structure, well, actually, even in this rake structure, I think it will be mixing, because in high rake structures, typically what tends to happen is that the opener is allowed to open slightly wider and the caller is calling slightly tighter. The reason why that is because, well, let me actually overbet here first, and it's tempting to jam here. I'm not going to do that. I think people are not overfolding whenever they go overbet there. Yeah, but anyway, here, when people are under 3-betting you quite a bit, like there's a video that came out recently where I shown that if they are under 3-betting even a little bit, your opening ranges go significantly wider quite quickly. Now, this might still be an indifferent open, even taking into the account the exploit, so you might as well just fold it. And like I said, yeah, you're not going to get 4-bet often enough, so especially in these games. So if you were to note log the pool's 4-betting frequency from the small blind in these games especially, then what you would see is that you would just play 3-bet or fold. You would just be incentivized to 3-bet everything, because 2 things can happen generally. One is he folds, that's great for you. You just won a decent sized pot without having to flop anything. And then the other option is you get to see the flop and maybe you'll flop anything. Alright, so 2 great outcomes. And in theory, you want to play 3-bet or fold if they're under 4-betting significantly. In practice, maybe you don't want to do that, but still too often. Here we just call it off. 16 big blinds seems reasonable at 6s. Here we're going to 3-bet. This is never 3-bets, but yeah, getting 2.5x. I expect my opponent not to 4-bet often enough, and it's not close. So like I would like if you're 3-betting this, you're probably playing pretty close to 3-bet or fold, to be honest. But I think that is reasonable if they go 2.5x, and yeah, you expect them to. This is too wide, but this guy 6% 3-bet over 380 hands. It's a small sample, who knows? But the pool is not 3-betting often enough in this situation, so you have a guy that is stylish looking, playing in a pool that is too tight. Yeah, you might as well just assume that he's too tight and go from there. Like in a sense, what we're doing is investing here, and it seems like investing in this guy being too tight is reasonable. We get raised here. You could decide to check your entire range here, that would be reasonable, but yeah, either way, this is fine. This is a cool spot. I am going to... He went relatively small. I think I'm going to check. It's a bit annoying. I'm going to have more 9x for sure, and leading here is somewhat reasonable. I think I'm just going to check here. I'm blocking some calls, even though I really shouldn't have too many 4x. I think just checking is going to be okay there, given the fact that it's really hard for him to have too many calls when he raises flop, checks back turn. He should definitely value bet the river, by the way, but I'm going to... Okay, so in theory we are going to have some really big sizes. Kind of thinking, do I want to just go for an overbet or win? I think I'm just going to go for an overbet. I wanted to show the queen. And I think like a 5 blocker, I'm blocking some flush draws and blocking some 5x is pretty decent to go and bluff with. In reality, the question is he going to find some calls there with, where is it? Oh, it's this table. And the question is he going to find some calls with 6-5 or 5-3 or 5 deuce or something like that? Ace-5. If he's not really, then having the 5 blocker is not that relevant, to be honest. You just put your opponent into a lot of tough decisions. So in a lot of situations where there was a flopped flush draw and then the turn is like a pairing card or it's a complete blank, the opposition player should actually check again and build like a consistent check raising range, and people are not doing that, and therefore you are incentivized. When they bet, they're weighted too much towards draws, and you're incentivized to raise with like weak top pairs, middle pairs sometimes even. This is close. I think I'm calling, but it's close. Wow. Yeah, it's actually fine. The reason why I think it's close is because he has Jack 10 and 9-10, Jack 9, some diamonds. He should be bluffing those in theory though. I'm not sure if he is in practice, so I might as well just fold there. I think folding is probably fine. It might be bad. Get a quick see bet. It's a range betting texture. Not going to read too much into that. We are going to call and then make a decision here. I'm just going to check. Nice. Okay, so now the question is, what sizing do we want to bet? I think I'm just going to go with 3/4 and hopefully get some calls by ace king or pocket tens or something like that. Although if he has a pocket pair, maybe you just go do this. If he has a pocket pair, he's a boat, and people aren't, like especially recreationals, aren't really folding boats or weak ace high. So I think it makes sense to be a bit greedy there. Fun fact, the 90% sizing is the most underbluffed sizing, relatively speaking. And I think it's because people are just like, they look at 3/4 with a value hand and then I think, oh, I can make a little bit more. And I end up betting 2 big blinds more. And that ends up being somewhere between 85 and 95% of the... Get a cold call here from the small blind. I am going to range bet here. It's pretty dry texture. I think we can just get away with it. Over card to the board. Like he doesn't really have a lot of queens. He actually has a reasonable amount of pocket pairs that are just going to fold somewhere. He's going to have some ace queen, and you're just going to jam. Yeah, like he doesn't really have boats. I have boats. I have straights. He doesn't really have 5x. I have 5x. I just have so many strong hands. It's really hard for me to have a bluff as well. Although I have some. Obviously, if I have this, then I'm going to have some random ace x. I'm not entirely sure what kind of player this is. Seems quite raggish. It's always nice when you get the you suck and then show the bluff. It's like the best feeling in the world. We can play a bunch of different strategies here. I think I'm going to mix and then check this one. And we're just going to hopefully get the showdown. Like he probably has an ace, but yeah, or queen. We're not winning very often, but sometimes still. So we just check there. I don't think we want to change our hand into a bluff. Although, well, actually on super broadway it might make sense to just jam there. In hindsight, I would have liked that. I think we can just jam there. We get 3 bets small here, so I end up calling. It is already pretty close. You might as well just fold. But when he goes this small, I think we can just call. Here versus 1/3, again, it's close. Probably okay. And here on the first rate, we just fold. And versus the second barrel, I think we just want to fold. he seems to be playing quite tight. It's already a close defend there on the turn. Two interesting hands. So let's start off with this one. We get a check here. I think a lot of players would automatically bet. I think that is not great. You could bet it, you could check it. Both are reasonable strategies. We rolled quite high, and our hand kind of wants to bet a bit more because it unblocks more of the jack high and lower flushes. Like if we have queen jack, for instance, I think we're going to be doing a bit more checking. Not on this texture maybe, so maybe this is a bet for now, but usually when you have one low and one high card, you're doing a bit more betting. And then here we end up c-betting, which is reasonable, and we get check raised, which I think people are not doing often enough. So I want to tread carefully here. And this is not a good all-in, I think. Is it a good all-in? No, I don't think so. Like it might be, to be honest. Like sometimes on these Jack 10 textures you have stuff like this, but here we are going to play a mixed strategy and we're going to check back with this hand. I think we want to overprotect our range a little bit because the pool is probing the turn too often. We get another check and we could decide to bet here. We could check. Both options are reasonable. I think I like checking. Now we're just going to go ahead and bet. He should have some really large check raises on this note and stuff like that, but you're never getting in that note because people are not nearly as creative as they should be. In fact, what should happen here is villain should have some very strong hands in his range still. So think stuff like pocket fours, some flushes on this river you should still have. People just don't end up having those because they are not aware that they should be checking relatively uncapped there. So they have to check a very strong range and bet at a very low frequency. It's more so they play their hand on the texture rather than actually playing solid strategies. This 3-bet is too wide. Now that we're here though, let's just range bet on this texture. That is pretty good for us. That is a very interesting turn. I'm wondering if it's one of those range betting turns, but a straight comes in. He should be calling some, I don't think it is, he should be calling some aces with ace queen, ace jack. And then if it's not a range betting turn, my hand is one of the first ones that wants to check here. So I think checking is going to be fine. And we get this. I am a little confused as to what this could be. I'm just going to fold. I don't know. Like that, he shouldn't have much there, but can jam. The hands that he can have are like king 10. So yeah, he can have hands like king 10, 9 10. But those are going to check raise the flop quite often. Pocket 9s, ace 10 he might have. That is a reasonable hand for him. So he can have some value. And generally when you're playing in a 50 Russian cash game and you're like, okay, but we can't really have a lot of value. But they 5x pots all in on the river. You can sort of assume that they still have the value this time. Basically what ends up happening is that what we are saying there is, okay, he needs to be very creative to have value, or he needs to be very creative to have a bluff. And it's just easier to be very creative when you have value. So we just give them credit for that. Some players might try to overbluff you. I think if I was playing this pool and at some point I would catch on to that and I would adjust. Because those are going to be typically the guys that are bluffing more versus everyone, right? And then you can see, hey, this guy is running like 28 VPIP and seems to be very aggressive in a lot of situations. All right, so here I am not entirely sure what happened, but we are going to check now. And here we're going to call, just in time. Checking back here, and then turn is somewhat close, but we have a gutter as well as a pair. And I think people are just not bluffing enough here for this sizing. So I'm just going to fold. And we'll check down here. And especially not if they go larger on the turn. So here we went 3/4 on the turn and then block bet on the river. And yeah, like if they go larger on the turn, the range is already a fair bit stronger. I think we already can't really bluff catch there in these games. I think people are just not bluffing enough. At least that's what the data is suggesting. We will value bet the river here. You can see I'm sizing down a little bit. Again, people are not check raising you often enough, so you can just size down with a hand like that and value bet it. Here I shouldn't really go for many small sizes, I think, because I just don't want to bet any 6. I think it will work too good. They're not raising me often enough, and they're just randomly folding because they have ace-8 and they are playing too many tables. So exploitatively just stabbing there makes a lot of sense. Again, we could range bet here. We could also have some checkbacks with hands like this. I think either way, so I'm just going to check back. This is very exploitative, but I think people are just randomly betting a bit too often. Here with a flush, you might think that we want to automatically raise, but that is not necessarily true. The reason why you don't want to automatically raise there is because people are... Now let me rephrase it. The reason why you don't want to automatically raise is because you want to have some flushes in both the calling and the raising range there. Now that he checks, we can safely assume that he's capped. He shouldn't be capped here, but he's capped. He should still have a ton of flushes in his range that he's playing like this, but quite likely he's not. I'm going to go with a bigger sizing there, which I would... Oh, this should be better, but I'm going to go with a bigger sizing there, which I shouldn't really be doing in theory, I think. But in practice, what I kind of want to do is look at my hand, look at the board, and ask myself, what is the sizing that my hand wants to bet, not my range. The reason I do that is because I think he is playing an incorrect strategy of being too capped and not having enough check raises. If I thought he would be check raising sufficiently, then I would want to bet smaller here, and a hand like Jack 4 would sometimes even gain a little bit of value by betting small and then getting check raised. But if that's not happening, then, and this is the case in a lot of these Russian cash games, then what you want to be doing is you want to bet larger with strong hands and bet smaller with weak hands. And that is a very exploitable strategy, but in fact what you're doing, you're exploiting the pool that is not raising enough versus the small bets. So you've seen me stab and probe a couple of times where I said this is not technically what you should be doing, but I'm doing it because of this. And this is the other side of the medal, where if you have a strong hand, you're now allowed to bet larger and put your opponent into a bluff catching decision where it's like, okay, either I'm calling or I'm folding. Raising, they're not doing much anyway. So, and then keep in mind that the majority of your EV comes from value. So being greedy in these situations is a good strategy. I can already say, if you guys have any questions, suggestions, you can see I'm doing a bunch of videos based on requests, so feel free to drop your request in the comment section down below. If you have any feedback, literally anything would be very helpful. I know a couple of guys have complained about the audio quality, and we'll update that when I'm in Andorra in a couple of weeks. And yeah, it's always nice to read comments, so if you have any comments, just drop them down below. Don't forget to subscribe, it would help me out a lot. And don't forget that there's a free Discord channel where I'm sometimes streaming my sessions and always responding to hands and engaging with any of you guys. So if you have Discord and you want to connect with me and my community, then feel free to just join it through the link down below. Here we went for a small c-bet, now we went for an overbet. I think we can go ahead and bet smaller actually as well now. Alright, so that's it for this video. If you guys have any questions, like I said, drop it in the comment section down below. Don't forget to subscribe, and talk to you guys soon.